Growing up, my family always joked that I had a knack for turning minor disputes into life-altering victories. I never imagined that this talent would collide headfirst with a certain HOA president. Let's call her Karen, over something as trivial as a patch of land. But that's exactly what happened. The land in question wasn't huge, just a modest lot at the edge of a quiet subdivision. My grandfather had bought it decades ago, and it had been passed down to me. It wasn't developed. Mostly wild grass, a few trees, and an old shed I used for storing tools. I never had any plans to sell it, and frankly, I enjoyed the peace and quiet. But apparently, Karen, the self-appointed guardian of her HOA, had other ideas. It all started when she decided to enforce some new, community aesthetic rules. She claimed that my lot was unsightly and that my overgrown grass and shed violated HOA standards. I ignored the notices at first. They were baseless, and I had every right to maintain my property as I saw fit. But Karen wasn't one to be ignored. One afternoon, she stormed over to the lot, clipboard in hand, and began taking photos of the property. When I confronted her, she crossed a line. She threatened to call the cops, claiming I was trespassing on community land and that my property somehow interfered with HOA rules. I could barely keep a straight face. I explained politely, maybe a little smugly, that the land in question was mine. She laughed it off or tried to. But the moment she mentioned calling the police, I knew I had the perfect opportunity. Sure enough, within minutes, Karen had dialed 911. A few patrol cars rolled up, sirens off, lights muted, and the officers quickly assessed the situation. I calmly explained my ownership, showing the deeds and property records. The officers politely informed her that she had no authority over the land and that her claims were entirely invalid. Karen's face turned shades of red I didn't think were physically possible. She mumbled something about technicalities and left in a huff. I thought that would be the end of it, but it was just the beginning. I had already started digging into her HOA's records out of curiosity, and what I found was staggering. Karen and the board had been overstepping their authority for years, enforcing rules selectively, and even filing liens against properties without legal standing. They were on shaky legal ground, and my encounter gave me the leverage I needed. I hired a lawyer and filed a formal complaint. The case was absurd but airtight. A board member harassing a property owner on their own land, filing false claims, and abusing HOA powers. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that Karen's HOA had been operating illegally in several areas, including unauthorized fees, improper voting procedures, and ignoring state HOA regulations. Within months, the HOA was dissolved under court order. Karen was removed from any position of authority and faced personal liability for some of the violations. The members of the community who had been terrorized by her rule celebrated quietly, relieved to finally be free of her oversight. And me? I had successfully defended my property and exposed a corrupt HOA in the process. Now, when I walk my lot, I smile every time I see the old shed standing proudly among the wild grass. Karen's threats feel almost comical in retrospect, a dramatic overreaction that led to her entire HOA being disbanded. The lesson is simple. Know your rights, stand your ground, and sometimes, a little patience and documentation can turn a would-be harasser into a cautionary tale. What started as a mundane dispute over grass and property boundaries ended with an entire HOA gone, and me, quietly victorious, still enjoying the peace of my land. Karen may have thought she was intimidating me, but in the end, she taught me one of life's best lessons. Never underestimate the power of owning your space and standing up for it.